This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so today, what I said is like these are the three themes which we have covered. Business case, which actually talks about justification why we are doing a particular project, and we have seen quite a lot of examples also, right? So, and another thing is organization, where we actually talks about roles and responsibilities, right? So, business case talks about justification, and quality talks about two things. First thing is it doesn't talk only about quality, it actually talks about requirements plus quality, right? So these are the three topics which we have covered. So the remaining themes we'll try to cover today, and those themes are like plan, change, progress, risk, right? So let us see if we are able to cover four things. We'll cover, otherwise we'll skip this for today, and we'll cover this particular topic tomorrow. Yeah, so that's what is the thought. So I'm little yeah, sometimes we may cover whatever contents are there little early, or sometimes it may take late, but we'll put a logical and will not stop any kind of theme in between. Rather, we'll complete one theme and we'll see what is the time, and based on that, what we'll do is we'll take up the next theme, which is typically risk, or otherwise we'll we can actually safely cover this particular topic tomorrow. So our objective basically is to cover these three topics: plan, change, and progress. That's what is the thought. Okay. So the style is same. Style is like we'll see what are the FAQs which are present in each theme. Last time I didn't had my Surface Pro. Okay, so what I've done is I have used Notepad. Now I've got my Pro. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll try to explain these things on this whiteboard so that it will be more interactive. And then what I'll do is I'll go through the slides. So going through the slides, I'll not spend too much of time in going through the slides, because that anyways I'm going to give you. So we'll spend a lot of time in discussing the topics on this whiteboard. Okay, so that's the plan. So we'll start with plan. So before starting with the plan, there are two things. First thing is, do you have any questions? Any questions with whatever we have discussed last time? Anything?
Not from
One
me right
general,
now.
sorry, oh, two multiple people talking at the same time.
Okay.
Okay, my question is just that themes, when you say whichever themes you're taking, is there any corresponding non-Prince2 terminology for that to understand? Uh, because themes has multiple meanings, so I couldn't catch it properly. I will revise it, but still, any short discussion about it where each theme in Prince2 is called this and non-Prince2 is called like that. If I get that explanation, it will be helpful to me.
Cool. Sure. So maybe I'll answer that first. So these are the themes which you actually see, right? So being a project manager, of course, there is no separate kind of term. I mean, PMP compared with PMP or generic things. But what I can say is, like as a project manager, we were discussing about roles and what project manager actually does, right? So planning, monitoring, and controlling. Okay, let us go back to that. So what are the aspects? We have seen aspects, and we have also seen what are the roles and responsibilities of project manager. So roles and responsibilities, when we are discussing last time, I mean, that will be there in your slides as well. So I told planning, monitoring, right? These are not aspects, but these are the things which project manager has: monitoring and control. The third one is like communication, and the fourth one is decisions, right? Corrective actions, right? So these are planning, monitoring, and controlling, corrective actions, communications. What is the thing which I've missed? Okay. So anyways, but these are the things which we have discussed. Okay. So what happens is, when project manager has to do all these activities: planning, monitoring, and controlling, communicating, making decisions, or taking corrective actions, right? So such kind of things, then what project manager need to know, right? Knowledge. So in order to do these things, the project manager actually requires some knowledge. So what is the knowledge a project manager requires? Project manager typically requires this knowledge. If project manager doesn't have this kind of knowledge, he will not be able to do these activities, right? So if project manager has knowledge on these things, then only he'll be able to work on his roles and responsibilities. Okay, so what I can say is this is the knowledge base typically project manager should have, and those things are called as themes. Did that answer your question?
Yes, yes, that's okay.
Okay. So without this, project manager will not be able to work on his roles and responsibilities. And one second, there is a small simple question I believe in the chat window. Uh, yes, sir. This is not mouse. It will be very difficult if I have to write all these things with mouse. So with mouse, yeah, definitely. This is pen, right? So normally what I do is I use my Surface Pro whenever I'm giving trainings, especially online trainings, so that we are used to such kind of whiteboard writings in our college days, and all. I mean, maybe in our offices also what we'll do is presentation is good, but most of the time we'll try to write certain things on whiteboard. So this will enrich the experience. That is what I think. Yeah, with mouse definitely it is difficult. Okay, so any questions? Sorry. Any questions from anyone? I think someone was talking, but I think there were two people talking, so I think one person has talked. So any questions from anyone? Okay, so let's continue with planning. Okay, so last time we discussed about quality. Now let us see. These are all the things which we have discussed. Yeah, one second. Okay, so okay, so no, thank you. So we'll start with this planning, right? So first thing is there are three important things we need to know when if we need to understand how to do planning and scheduling. So first thing is what is the difference between plan and schedule? This is what a lot of people get confused, and we need to understand the difference. Then only we'll be able to work on it in a better way. And don't worry about this too much, because a lot of people use interchangeably like planning and schedule. So I too use it. Normally a lot of people when they are working in office, they say schedule as plan, plan as schedule. Nothing to worry, but very important thing is we need to understand what is schedule and plan, and what are the four levels of planning, right? In Prince2 there are four levels. So let us try to understand what are the four levels of planning and why is it required, and what are steps involved in planning, right? So that is also very much required. Okay, so these are simple three questions which are present in planning. So if you see business case, I think there were 15 FAQs, and if you see organization, there were 5 or 6, and in quality theme, I think we have seen around 15 to 16 FAQs. So here we have got three FAQs, only three important concepts, but I think each concept will take its own time. Okay, so before that, maybe last week you were a little new to me, but I think now we know each other very well. So let us try to make it as much interactive as possible. Feel free to ask questions. I'm you can ask me as silly questions as possible, because that's totally okay, right? Right. So maybe before starting or getting into planning, I just wanted to ask you one question, maybe with maybe anyone. Uh, okay. Uh, Anyone staying in a city where there's a lot of traffic and they take time to go to office? It totally depends on how much time it will take in order to reach their office. So anyone in this group?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, great. So Bangalore is good example. Yeah, Sumant and Komal, yes. So maybe since Komal is new, what we'll do is we'll ask some questions to Komal. So Komal, how much time will you take in order to reach office?
45 minutes around.
Okay, so I'll repeat it once again. So Komal has said 45 minutes around. So what is meant by around?
It's like sometime it's 50 minutes, sometime I reach by 40 minutes as well. Depends on traffic.
Great. So yeah, so you told 15 minutes and you also told 45 minutes, right? So whenever we are talking about, I mean, if my question was straight, so you told me that it will take 45 minutes, but you have told me certain reasons also. For example, I'm deleting this one. Yeah. Suppose if there is traffic, you'll take 15 minutes, and if there is no traffic, it will take, sorry, 45 minutes. If there is no traffic, it will take 15 minutes. This is what typically you have told me. That's fine. I mean, we can also talk about, I mean, traffic and no traffic. It totally depends upon time you are traveling. Suppose if you are traveling typically in office hours, which is morning 9 a.m. or something, and starting from office to home at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m., obviously there will be a lot of traffic. So it depends on time, right? Time, and maybe it depends on day, right? So maybe on a working day it will take late. On a holiday, if you want to go to your office, typically you don't go, but if you want to go to office, so it is going to take less amount of time. And another thing is we didn't consider. I mean, one important question which I need to ask you is like, how do you commute, right? Suppose if you are walking, obviously it will take more than 45 minutes, I believe. So maybe it will take 2 hours, right? Suppose let's take a very extreme example. If you're trying by helicopter, maybe it will take 5 minutes, right? So mode of transport is also important. So it's so simple, because you have been traveling from office to home to office daily. But if I'm exactly asking you how much time will you take to office, there are different numbers which I'm getting, right? So 2 hours, 5 minutes, whatever it is, based on various kinds of factors or various kinds of situations. So basically, the simple question which I've asked is how much time will you take to go to office, and there are various kinds of answers. So let me ask you a complex question: how much time will you take? How much time to execute a project? All right. So this is something, this is something which is totally unknown, because project, there will be we need to understand requirements, we need to understand people, we need to understand risks, we need to understand assumptions, we need to understand dependencies, we need to understand quite a lot of things. Then only we'll be able to come up with a number, right? So simple question, there are many answers. For complex question, I believe there will be much more complex answers, right? So it is not that simple to plan. It is not that simple to schedule, right? So I mean, prepare a schedule. So it is complex. So that's the reason why plan theme is considered to be quite important, and it is not that simple, right? So let us try to understand these topics, because I just told you what is the complexity of planning or scheduling. And normally what a lot of people will try to do is will try to commit to customer, saying that it will take 6 months of time and will do whatever it takes, right, in order to fit into that particular 6 months. So we'll do whatever it takes means what we'll do is maybe if it is not working okay, then you'll add more resources, or sometimes you'll try to negotiate the scope, or sometimes what you will do is you'll make people work hard on Saturdays and Sundays or late in the evenings, right? This is what is a typical problem which a lot of people, a lot of project managers have, right? And motivation levels, these are all the things. I mean, we are just talking about basic things. I mean, motivation levels are also quite important whenever we are committing something to the customer. Okay, so uh, considering that it is not that simple, let us try to discuss about the topic. Yeah. Okay, so let us try to first initially let us try to understand difference between plan and schedule. Okay, so first one, difference between plan and schedule. So what I should say is like we have got certain things like a lot of people use this one MPP, Microsoft Project Plan, or any other software similar to that, which typically contains certain kinds of fields, and those fields are like what I can say is typically a task ID, right? A task ID or something, and then you have who are the resources who will be working on, and what is the sequence, right? So all these things, what we'll do is I'll typically write it task ID, right, and followed by task name. Next, there is something called as who are the resources, what is the predecessor, and what is start date, and what is end date. So typically any project manager, what that project manager will try to do is they will write, being an IT guy, what I'll do is something related to, backend work, something related to database or something. So resources could be X and Y will be working on it. This is dependent on something called as task ID, task some 6 or something. Start date could be something like today, and end date could be something like after 10 days, whatever it is. So a lot of project managers use something like this in order to prepare a plan. So this particular thing, this is not called as plan, rather this is called as a schedule, right? So schedule is something which basically contains start date, end date, resource, predecessor, something like what is it dependent on, what is the what is the task it is basically dependent on. Something need to be completed, then only this particular thing can be started, right? So maybe I'll just use a simple name called as dependent task, right? So this is schedule, right? So in order to come up with a schedule, you require a plan. In order to come up with this, you require a plan. So what does plan includes? Plan includes lot of subplans, right? And certain other things. Suppose if you want me to do a planning, first and the foremost thing what I do is I'll do something like first thing what I'll do is I'll try to understand scope, and second thing what I'll do is I'll try to understand assumptions, dependencies. One second. Dependencies, constraints, risks, communications, stakeholders, roles and responsibilities, right? And something like hardware, infra required, right? So these are all the things what I'll do is I need to consider all the things. Then only what I'll know is I'll be able to come up with a proper start date and proper end date. For example, I'm working on a project which required some hardware and which is present in a different country, right? So someone need to ship that particular hardware. Then only what I'll do is I'll be able to complete that particular activity. So it is dependent on that. So if someone is not shipping on time, and if I'm not getting that particular hardware on time, then I'll not be able to commit on start date and end date, and my resources will be typically free as well, because they are typically waiting for that particular hardware. So this is called as plan. So whenever you're planning, you need to have all these things very well defined and very well written. Then only you'll be able to come up with a proper schedule, right? So you could understand, right? So what is the difference between plan and schedule? And we are
I have a
basically
question.
Mhm.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. So, what we'll do in that scenario if we are working on some tool and we put the project date as suppose 31st March, but it has a different field as expected due date as 7th of April. So,
Mhm.
what will take as our schedule in this scenario?
Can you repeat the question once again, because Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So what I'm saying is, suppose in case of you've given reference of MPP. Suppose in case
Hmm.
we are using some other tool and we are preparing schedule in which end date is 31st March, but tool has a different expected due date also. So we fill
Hmm.
that as 7th of April. So what would be the most accurate thing as per the schedule? What we would be preparing?
Okay, that's a good question. So there are three kinds of things here. I mean, have you heard about Perth? Uh, Program evaluation and review technique. So normally what will happen is, you mean to say, let us assume there are two different dates, right? I mean, let us forget about tool. Let us assume that there are 2 days. One is a date which is right,
Yep.
like March and 7th April. So maybe tool says something, or we got some other date. So there are two different end dates. So how did you get to that particular end date is what is important. So normally, in order to do such kind of planning, what is the important thing is behind this, there is something called as estimates, right? So whenever someone is giving estimates, the best way in order to do this is this kind of technique which we can follow. So what we'll do is we will see what is the best case. There is something called as, considering what is the optimistic thing, what is pessimistic thing, and what is the mean, right? And most probable or mean. So, and based on that, we are going to come up with typically most suitable date or something, right? So there is a formula which a lot of project managers typically follow. There are many formulas here, but one of the best formula which I like is pessimistic plus optimistic plus 4m by 6. You will get a value that is called as an estimate. So what you will do is you will get that particular estimate. You will try to put it in a tool. It could be MPP, or it could be Excel, or it could be any other tool. There are a lot of tools which are available in the market and online. So what you will do is you will get that particular thing, most probable estimate, and you will try to put in that tool. So instead of this or this value or this value, what you will try to do is we are going to get it, what I can say is an average kind of value or most probable kind of value by using this particular formula. And that is what we are going to put it in a plan. And I'll also tell you something about, what we practice in our organization. So there are two things. First thing is, when everything goes well, you'll be able to complete certain things at a particular point of time. There could be a lot of uncertainties in a project where, a lot of things might not happen on time. So what we do is whenever we are preparing the schedule, this is one of the best practice which we can follow. What we do is, one second, what we do is, we'll do this one. So let us assume we are giving a date called as 31st March. And what we do is, what is our confidence level in order to get to 31st March? We will say our confidence level is 70%. Based on all these things, assumptions, scope, dependencies, and all. And what we'll do is, we'll also give another date called as 7th of April. I'm just giving a random date, 7th of April. What is the probability that we'll be able to achieve this? Maybe 90%, right? We normally try to give dates like this with the probability of achieving that particular end date. And another thing is, like I said, this is one of the best thing which we can follow in order to come up with this. And one more thing is, you are not giving these estimates. Estimates are basically given by the people who are working on the activities. If you are giving estimates, then obviously you will be biased based on, some, you may feel that, a lot of things happen. Okay. But, you typically ask the people who are on the floor and take the positive value, pessimistic value, optimistic value, and most probable value, and you will try to come up with a mean date. And you are going to give the probability something like this, which we follow in our organization, so that customer is very much aware of when we are going to deliver. We'll say maybe 30th of April is like, we never ever actually say that it is like 100% probability or something. We typically say that it is going to be like 98% probability that we are going to achieve it by 31st of June. So you'll know what is the best case, worst case, and all, when to expect that particular product. Okay, this is one of the good practice which we follow in our organization. So did that answer your question?
Yep. Thank you so much.
Okay. So okay, so I made this whiteboard messy, so I'll clean this up. Okay, so we have basically discussed about two things. One is what is the difference between plan and schedule. You need to have a plan in order to come up with a schedule. Okay, so let me talk about one particular term called as project horizon, which we discussed earlier also, right? So obviously, being a project manager, you will be able to see what is happening in immediate 1 month. I'll say 1 month. You have a clarity here. You know who are the people who are working in this 1 month. You know what is the proper scope, what is the workload, what are dependencies, how much your assumptions are and all. But as you go forward till 6 months, 6 months, what will happen is this particular thing is little vague. You don't have clarity on this. So low visibility, right? You'll have low visibility. So this particular thing is called as project horizon. So project manager will be typically able to predict a lot of things which are going to happen in the near future, but at the same time will not have too much of visibility on what are the things which are going to happen at a later point of time. So this particular concept is called as project horizon. Okay, and I think I think this is good enough in order to uh, complete our first concept. What is the difference between plan and schedule? We'll discuss more about assumptions, constraints, risks, and dependencies when we are going through the last one. But now let us see what are the 4 levels of planning. So obviously, project manager, I mean, in PMP or PMBOK, there is something called a schedule, plan, and all. But these levels are not typically available. So in Prince2, we have got 4 levels of planning. So let us try to understand what are the 4 levels of planning. So 4 levels of planning is basically evolved for something related from why I have actually talked about project horizon is okay. So it is basically dependent on project horizon only. That's the reason why you have got 4 levels of planning. So first thing is project plan. Anyway, so project plan. So I'm not using the term called a schedule. I'm interchangeably using these topics, but okay, that should be you understood, right? What is plan and schedule? So what is project plan is? Project plan is something like the plan for the entire project, where you have got a lot of terms, a lot of things which are not properly which are not properly visible, or which have got or there are a lot of questions or assumptions there. Next, we have got something called as stage plan. What is meant by stage plan? So stage plan is, as I told, whenever we have a project with a start date and end date, that particular thing will be divided into smaller portions or manageable portions. Some people can call it as milestones, or we can call these things typically as stages, right? So we have got something called as a stage plan. So stage plan is something like the plan for each and every particular phase or stage or or milestone. So that's called as a stage plan. And the third kind of plan which we have is basically team plan, right? So team plan is something like what I can say is a team will typically work on tasks. So if the tasks are organized well and they are more kind of a technical work, right? So as I have told, working on backend, working on store procedure, working on creating tables, or working on front end, or working on HTML portions or CSS portions, such kind of things are basically technical kind of job which team will actually work on. So that is called as a team plan. And the fourth kind of plan which we have got is called as exception plan. Exception plan. So we'll discuss about all these plans, right? We'll spend a bit of time on all these kinds of plans. So let us try to understand what is meant by project plan. So whenever there is a business case, right? We know business case, which actually talks about justification of the project. So then what we need to have is we need to have some kind of plan, right? We need to have a plan. That means in order to incorporate this, or in order to construct this particular building, or in order to complete this particular, flyover or something, it is going to take X amount of time, right? So that particular thing is called as a project plan, and that will be typically vague, right? And one of the interview question is like, for example, if you're attending an interview, if someone is giving you some kind of requirement, you shouldn't be giving exact answer. You can give a vague answer. So the person interviewer might ask you a question like, there is a building, there is a house which need to be constructed, so how much time will you take considering ABCD? Then your answer should be something like, it will take 1 year to 1.5 years. That is what you are going to tell, right? Because based on the inputs which that person has given, you'll not be able to exactly tell the date. Like 1 year, it will take 1 year exactly. You can't tell, right? So that's called as project plan. So whenever there is a business case, you can come up with a plan or estimated date or something, which is having something called as a range. So it's like 1 year to 1.5 year, right? It can't be like 1 year to 10 years. So you need to have a proper range values, right? That's basically project plan. Then what will happen, that project plan will be splitted into smaller and manageable portions. So maybe first phase, what you want to do is you want to work only on only on backend, right? So in backend, when you are developing a software product, which includes creation of tables and writing some kind of store procedures, right? So that is your stage one. And maybe second stage, what you want to do is you want to work on front end, maybe writing something related to UI, something on something using HTML, and something using controls, some kind of controls and all, right? So that's front end you want to work on. So you'll have a clear clarity when you split that into front and back end. Something called as, next thing is you want to manage interactions. It could be your third stage. And maybe your fourth stage is like what I should say, you want to do something related to maybe deploying it and deploying. So it could be something like this. So what you will do is you will have clear-cut ideas on what you need to achieve at the end of that particular stage. So each and every stage which you are seeing here will be more detailed. So that more detailed kind of thing is called as a stage plan. So if you're working in an agile environment, maybe you can say this particular thing as use a different color. This particular thing as stage can be considered as a sprint. Right? You'll know sprint has its objectives, what you want to achieve at the end of the sprint, right? All those things. Okay, so next, third thing is called as a team plan. So team plan is like how many members are there, on what are the things which they'll be working, and all that will be typically present in team plan. Okay, so typically technical tasks. So one thing which I wanted to mention here is, as I have told earlier, team manager is optional. When team manager is optional, team plan will also be optional, right? So if it is a very small project for 15 days or 30 days, you don't want to have multiple hierarchies like project manager, team manager, and some other manager and all, right? So in such kind of situations, what project manager will do is project manager will act as a team manager as well. And he will coordinate with the team and make sure that the tasks are properly splitted and are tackled properly. So team plan is optional because team manager is optional. And another thing, this is very, very important, and and there might be a couple of questions in your examination as well, right? So what is an exception plan? So I'll spend good amount of time on what is an exception plan. So let us assume, so I'm deleting this one, exception plan. So let us assume project manager has actually thought that there is a stage, this is one stage, so it starts at A which ends at B, and let us assume that this is 1 month. Okay, So this is 1 month duration. Let's assume, and there will be some kind of delta, like small delta, which could be like 3 days. I mean, people will not say anything if it is like 1 month or 1 month 3 days, and this is called tolerance limit, which we have already discussed. Okay, so let's assume at this particular point of time, at this point, project manager realized that it is not going to take 1 month 3 days, it is going to take like 2 months instead of 1 month 3 days. It is going to take 2 months. So obviously what he need to do, he need to communicate that. One of the important thing what he need to do is he need to communicate this particular thing to project board, mentioning the reason, reasons. You need to communicate this to the project board, saying that it is actually, we thought that it is going to take 1 month or 1 month 3 days maximum, but it is going to take 2 months because one resource met with an accident. Maybe one resource, I don't know why I take such kind of weird examples, so but still fine. Okay, one resource met with an accident and he can't report to office, so one resource met with an accident. So that's the reason why there are one or typically 3 resources are there, one key resource met with an accident. So he will go with this particular reason to project board, and project board, what they will do is they will review, and this is something which is like accept. I mean, it is not something like, it is not taking 1 year, 2 months is like okay. Project board may feel that it is like okay, and what they will do is they will ask project manager to raise, reason. I mean, project manager, what he has done is when it is taking 2 months, he has basically raised an exception raised. So once it is reviewed and approved, project manager is going to come up with a better plan or an updated plan considering this. And that particular updated plan, if it is approved, is called as an exception plan. Okay. So I'll repeat it once again because this is important and this terminology is not so common. So let us assume that project manager has thought the stage would be completed in 1 month maximum, and the tolerance limit is like 3 days. That means 1 month 3 days maximum he should be able to complete that stage. In the middle, because of a particular reason, it could be like accident, one critical resource met with an accident, project manager couldn't complete that particular stage in 1 month 3 days. Project manager will typically take 2 months in order to complete it. So he goes to the project board by raising an exception, saying that this particular stage can't be completed in 1 month 3 days, rather it will take 2 months. Then project board will review it and most probably they will approve it. If it is approved, then project manager will come up with an updated stage plan, and that updated stage plan is called an exception plan. Okay. Hope I didn't confuse you, but this is called as exception plan. And again, this particular thing is a typical terminology, the way in which how a project manager tackles when there are some kind of uncertainties in a particular stage is exception. Okay. So then I think we have spent some good amount on the second one. What are the 4 levels of planning? Okay, next let us see what are the steps involved in planning. This is considered to be important. So whenever you are doing planning, these are typically steps which you need to consider, and there are 6 steps which you need to consider when you are creating a plan or creating a schedule. So let us see what are the 6 steps which need to be considered. It looks so silly and simple, but these are very, very important because based on the question which I have asked you, if you want to travel from your home to office, it could take 15 minutes and it could take 2 hours as well. That means if a project need to be completed, it can take 15 days or it could take 2 years. So planning is considered to be very, very important. Otherwise, if you say 15 days and you take 2 years, obviously, no one in the world will be happy, right? Right. So let us see what are the steps which are involved in planning. Okay. 1 second. Okay. So 6 steps in planning. Okay, so let's see what is the first step. First thing is, maybe in order to understand this particular situation, in order to understand these 6 steps, what I want you to do is you just, I'll just tell you a scenario, just try to understand that particular scenario and, try to be in that particular scenario so that you'll understand this topic. Okay. So first thing is like, you have entered a new organization. You are currently working in an organization, you have joined a new company. And that is typically a mid-sized company which contains maybe 200 employees, 200 to 250 employees, right? And it's a software firm. So obviously, the expectations will be little higher in such kind of companies rather than large companies, right? So first thing is these 6 steps. So you are in a situation where you have left your current company and joined a small company like this, and you joined as a project manager. So on day one, since it is a small company, your boss could be someone like director or someone like CEO or CXO, anyone, right? It could be even CEO could be your boss, your reporting manager, right? So CEO of the company has actually called you, and on day one, and he explained initial meet and greet, and after that he explained something about the project, and he has shared you a mail. He explained for maybe 15 minutes, and he has sent you some details, some links over mail. And what is his expectation is create a plan by tomorrow. So the question is, you came to a new company and you are new to domain, you are new to people, and the expectations are super high that your boss wants you to prepare a plan within 1 day, right? So how do you do it? How do you do it? You can simply say I can't do it, but obviously we don't know, right? So it's your first assignment. You shouldn't be saying I can't do it. At least you should give a try. So that's what is the situation. So whatever 6 steps which I'm going to tell you will typically help you to design a plan in 1 day. All right, it might not be the best plan in the world, but it will help you to design a plan in 1 day. Okay, so first step, what you are going to do. So first step is step 1. First thing what you are going to do is you will be choosing a format. I'm using normal terms here, simple terms, not exactly what is present in the slides, but you need to choose a format. That means you go back to your desk, and in this 250 there could be at least 4 or 5 project managers, right? 4 or 5 project managers. So you'll go and you'll say hi to those other project managers who would be your friends maybe going forward. You'll talk with 1 or 2 people and you'll say this kind of scenario. Maybe you'll say that boss has basically given me an assignment saying that he wants a plan in 1 day. Can you just share me the format on what he's expecting? Because your 4 or 5 people might have worked with CEO since quite long time, and they know actually what CEO is expecting. So maybe they will share you one sample plan. Now you typically understood what your CEO expects. So you have got the format. The only thing is you need to remove certain things and you have to add certain things, right? So you know the format. So this is typically the first step which you are going to do, right? So I believe this one will take 1 hour, not more than that. You got the format, you've seen the format, and you are already a project manager. So this format will not be totally new. You will understand almost all the things which are present in that particular format. Okay. So next thing is he has sent you a mail, and I told he has talked with you for 15 minutes. So you have got some kind of information on what he is expecting. So what you will do is you will define and analyze what is the product which he is expecting, right? So product, let us assume that what he is basically expecting a mobile app. So based on this, what you came to know is, a mobile app is what he's expecting. So he'll understand these activities. You'll try to understand what is it. I mean, what would be the output of that particular format. That could be typically mobile app. So it is so simple for you. You'll not take too much of time. Maybe in 1 hour, you will try to understand by studying the mail, and based on his interaction, the solution is basically a mobile app. Okay, simple. Next, the third one is, in order to develop that particular mobile app, you need to understand, you need to split it based on, the mail and interaction. You are going to identify activities. And another thing very important, whenever you are identifying activities, you need to understand dependencies. DPN, okay, whatever. So you need to understand the dependencies also. That means, in order to develop a mobile app, what are the things which you require, whether you want to develop a native app or whether you want to develop a hybrid app. So these are, fundamental things which you typically require. And what is dependent on what? Maybe, in order to do it, you require certain things, maybe something need to be completed in order to get another task done. So you will understand, you will typically say, these are the activities. Okay, maybe so typically there might be 5 or 6 activities, something like this, 3, 4, 5, right? And there could be something like 6. So you can do these two things in parallel, and then you have to do these things in sequence. So this is what is understanding activities and dependencies. So if you need to achieve 3, you need to achieve maybe 1 and 2, right? So these are the activities and dependencies which you are going to achieve. So typically it is like parallel versus sequential is what is need to be understood, which is very, very important, which a lot of people miss out, right? What are the things which can be done sequentially, what are the things which can be done parallelly is very important, right? In maths, right, in maths, maybe, yeah, we have studied something in our school days, right? So it's like time and work problems. In our school days, we used to have a problem saying that 10 people can construct a wall in 10 days. 10 men can construct a wall in 10 days. So 20 men can construct a wall in how many days? This is what is our 6th class or 7th class question. So what we try to do is, we will say the answer as 5, because this has been double, this will get reduced by half, right? So it's typically like, maybe this is what is the formula, 10 into 10 by 20. So 10 into 2, 2 into 5 is what is the answer. This is correct in mathematics, and especially in time and work problems. In project management, this is wrong, right? You can't divide everything by total number of people. So if it is taking 100 days is what is the estimate, you have got 5 people, you should not say 5, right? 5 into 20 equal to 100, so it will take 20 days. That is totally wrong. So understand the activities and dependencies, right? So I have typically encountered this kind of situation many times in my life, and I have utilized this one also. So sometimes I have told, how much time will you take? Maybe a resource has told me that he'll take 20 days in order to do that. Then I'll say, I'll give you apart from you, I'll give you 3 other people. Can you give me in 5 days? Then he used to say yes, which is not typically correct, and they used to work a little late in the evening in order to achieve this. It is because all the things are not parallel, they are sequential as well. Okay, so this is important. You have to understand what are parallel and sequential activities. Okay, next thing is, fourth thing which you need to do is, after identifying activities and dependencies, you can now prepare schedule. Schedule is for each and every activity, what is the start date, end date, predecessor, like what I've told earlier. The table which I have created, like start date, end date and all. So you'll be able to create a schedule. After creating that particular schedule, you document, after creating that particular schedule, oh sorry, I think I missed one particular thing. So one second. So after identifying activities, you need to estimate each and every activity. Like what is a, I mean, earlier also I have given an example, like in order to estimate, there is a better technique, like ask a lot of people how much time will it take, average it and come up with the best possible estimate. So estimate. So take it from a lot of people or take it from experts. So involve all the experts or involve a lot of people so that you get estimates. The next thing is prepare a schedule, which is typically your spreadsheet or MPP, which contains task ID, resource name, predecessor, what is the start date, what is the end date. And after creating schedule, you create a plan. So what is meant by plan? I have told you before also. What are the contents of plan? So contents of plan are like all these assumptions, risk, constraint, dependency, scope, out of scope, right? And roles and responsibilities, stakeholders, communications, uh, like hardware, software, everything will come under, all the sub plans will come under plans, right? So prepare a plan. So now what you have done is you have typically created all these things. There could be something like TBD or to be discussed, or it can be done later and all, but typically you will be able to come up with a plan as soon as possible, maybe within one day, right? You might not have a complete 100% information, but still you will be able to prepare this particular plan, right? So these are 6 steps which are involved in planning. If you are missing any of these things, any of these 6 steps, then I think you will not be able to typically develop a good plan. So these are steps which you need to follow as a project manager in order to create a plan. Okay, so all these are typically followed whether you are preparing a project plan or a stage plan. And very important thing is, whenever you are working on all these things, always identify risks, right? Because you feel that everything will be okay, but there are a lot of uncertainties in real world. There are a lot of uncertainties, so that's what is important. Okay, so with this, what I have typically covered is, I think I've covered the 3 questions which are related to planning. But before going into this, I just uh, wanted to showcase you a small video, which is, I mean, you can also see this one, a small assumption. So I've just pulled it. I'll show you 2 videos. You're able to see it, right? Okay. So observe this video a little carefully. It is not that clear, but try to watch it. Right? I'll share this link as well, but see this video. Okay, that is typically an ad, but what is that we need to consider out of it is nothing but assumptions, right? This person, what he has basically thought is that he was cleaning the car, and he basically cleaned it to a certain extent so that he can actually start it, but suddenly he came to realize that it is not his car. The car is something, this one, right? So a lot of people or a lot of project managers go with a lot of assumptions, which need to be taken care by project manager very well. If assumptions are not taken care, then what will happen is assumptions need to be documented and need to be managed well by the project managers. Otherwise, what will happen? You will typically do something which is not actually expected. Okay, so that's very important while doing the planning. Okay, so let's jump on to this topic and go through the slides, right? So a lot of time I have spent explaining these things on a whiteboard. So now what we'll do is we'll not spend too much of time. Maybe we'll spend 10 or 15 minutes in order to go through slides. So there are some tips which are required when we are planning, that is there in the slides. So I'll explain you those tips when we are going through the slides. Okay. Okay, so I told you this one, like what is a plan, what is a schedule, it contains start date, end date, parameters and all. I talked about project horizon. I told about what are the 4 levels of planning. So this I have already covered. What is project plan I have told. And very important, important thing which I wanted to tell you is, whenever we are talking about plan or plan and all, a lot of people try to talk about schedule only, right? Schedule, maybe we'll basically talk about time, but it is not just time. Whenever we are doing planning, we have to do something related to cost as well, right? So it is not just time, but all the aspects need to be considered. But one of the best example which I feel is, if we are talking or giving examples related to time, people will be able to understand. If I'm talking about something related to cost, it will be little difficult. Little difficult to understand. But it is not just related to time, it is related to cost. You are delivering the project quickly, but what is the cost? Or delaying it. So what is the cost, right? Okay, so stage plan also I have told. A project plan is divided into stages and all. So there is one red box here. So what it actually says is, for example, you have actually said that a stage is going to get completed in 1 month, and it took 1 month 10 days. And second stage also you have anticipated that it is going to take 1 month, and it took 1 month 10 days. Similarly, third stage also you thought it is going to be 1 month, but it took 1 month 10 days. So what is that you typically understood is, there is something which you have missed out in all the stages, right? So maybe you can directly consider, whenever you're planning for the next stage or the other stage, you know that it is not going to happen in 30 days, it is going to take 40 days. Put it as 40 days, right? So get the knowledge related to the performance of previous stages, and based on that plan your next stage, right? So that's how stage plan is. One important point related to stage plan. As I said, team plans are optional. The team manager itself is optional, so team plan is also optional. So exception plan I have told you, but this is one example which I wanted to read. So whatever example which I have given when I was writing on the board was related to time. So the example which is here is related to cost. So I'll just try to read out this particular thing so that you'll get an idea on what is exception plan. An exception plan is used to recover the effect of tolerance deviation. For instance, during a stage, the project manager forecasts to go the tolerance on cost by 15%. Then they must warn project board about the deviation. So that deviation is called exception, right? So project board will mostly ask to update the plan and complete the stage and replace the current stage plan. So the project manager will create an exception plan if it is approved by project board that will replace the stage plan. Okay, which is typically used by the project manager to complete that particular stage. Okay, so this is important. So you need to understand what is exception, what is exception plan. Exception plan is nothing but updated stage plan. Exception is nothing but tolerance deviation or tolerance breach. Okay, so another thing is, if team manager is forecasting that a work package is going to exceed tolerances, then he is not going to raise an exception plan, right? He is going to raise something different, which is called as issue. This will come for your examination. Okay, so it's like if a team manager feels that there is a tolerance breach, then he will not raise an exception, he will raise an issue. So what is an issue is something which we are going to consider when we are discussing another theme, but at this point of time, remember this one. So question could be something like, if team manager foresees that there is some kind of tolerance breach, what would he do? He will raise an exception, or he will prepare another plan, or he will inform someone, or he will raise an issue. So the answer is he will raise an issue. Okay, so a common question for your foundation examination. Okay, so what are the 6 steps which are involved in planning? So I have told, first thing is take the format, template, design the plan. Next thing is define and analyze the products. So understand what it is. So split it down so that you finally understand what they are expecting is nothing but a mobile app. After doing that, understand what are the activities and dependencies, right? So what are the things which can be done in sequential? What are the things which can be done in parallel? That is what is sequence. That is what is identifying activities and dependencies. Next, fourth one is prepare estimates. So we'll spend some time here in order to understand what is meant by what are the things which need to be considered while you get the estimates from your teammates. Okay, first thing is resource productivity is 80%. That means if a person is coming to office from morning 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., it doesn't mean he'll be working on project from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. right? So what they will do, they'll do some admin activities, they will go to gym, they will have some kind of coffee table discussions, right? And they will spend some time in communicating, they'll be attending to some kind of activities and in the organization, right? So there are a lot of activities which will happen in an organization, and the productivity is like only 80%. 80% is on a higher side, but I feel it is 60%, or 60 to 70% is considered to be good. Okay, so that's what I think, but it again depends from organization to organization. That's important. And another thing is, if resources are working on multiple projects, they take longer time to complete. So if you see a shared resource, then you assume that whatever estimate that particular shared resource is giving, it is going to cross, right? If it says 10 days, he's working on some other project, so there will be some other issue there. So if he's a shared resource, make sure that that is properly accounted. And very important thing is, people are optimistic, right? So one question which I have asked is like, for example, if I ask a team, okay, if I ask, I don't do this, but if I'm asking a team, like how much time will it take, then they may say 10 days. If my boss is asking it, maybe they'll say 10 days. Or if my boss is asking it, they will typically say 5 days, or 6 days. Why is it? These are some of the things which are typically psychological. And another thing is, they wanted to prove certain things. Normally what will happen is, this kind of situation I have encountered recently also. So I've asked a person, in a meeting, I have asked a person what is their confidence level on a particular thing. One person has told 70%. Since that person has told 70%, the other person has told 80, another person has told 85, some other person has told 90, 100, right? So people typically try to compare with other people, and they try to give some kind of values, right? So, and people, most of the resources are optimistic, they feel that everything goes well. So that also need to be considered. Okay, use your own experience and other experience also. So never, I totally understand that you might be having a lot of experience in project management, but take others' thoughts also, which is very good. Involve product owner, because this is, this person knows about the product a lot, right? So that's the reason why it is better to involve the product owner, because he will say, oh, you are thinking this way, it is not just a mobile app in Android, it's not an Android app, rather it has to be a iPhone app as well, right? So it is better to involve the product owner. So in such kind of situations, what you will do, you will decide what is that you want to work on, whether you want to work on a hybrid app or a native app. If you're working on a native app, it is, you need to work it, you need to have a team working on Android, and you need to have a team working on iOS. Right? So if you have a hybrid app, which typically you develop in one environment, and it will work in multiple other environments, such kind of things. Okay, so involve product owner, build provision for unexpected. So lot of things will happen when you are executing a project. People may resign, there could be, I'm just talking about people issues, people may leave the job, people, one thing which I used earlier is like, people have certain kind of things, like they may they might have met with an accident, and they'll not be able to come to office for 1 month or 2 months. There could be something like maternity leave, marriages and all. So these are certain things which I'm talking about people, but there could be equally some kind of technical things as well, right? So technical blockages, you suddenly encounter certain thing, and you have to redo certain things. Maybe you have to do some changes at architecture level and all. So that's also considered to be important. And another thing is cost individual activities. You don't say that this entire chunk of work, this 1 month of work is going to take, maybe 1 CR rupees. So rather you say that, each and every individual activity is taking this much, so your cost estimation will be more appropriate. Okay, so communicate assumptions, exclusions, constraints, and all. So as I told, assumptions, a lot of people go by assumption. You assume that it is, like I said, maybe your product owner or customer is typically expecting an iOS app, but maybe based on whatever requirement he has given, you might be thinking that he's expecting typically an Android app. So such kind of things. So document assumptions and communicate. I'm assuming that this is what it is. I'm assuming that hardware will come on time. I'm assuming that this guy will design it. So all those things, please document it. So important slide. So these are 6 steps, and in order to get a realistic plan, so you need to consider all these things as a project manager. So simple things, but people tend to forget. So next thing is prepare schedule. Prepare schedule, activity sequencing and resources, and finally document the plan, which contains all these things. So these are typically 6 steps which are involved in planning. Okay, so who is the hero here? Hero is project manager, because he will do a lot of things, right? And stage plans, project plans. So whenever you see something called as a plan in management products, so planning is basically done by project manager. Except a team plan, all the plans are prepared by project manager only. Right, this is just created by team manager, and this is optional. Prince2 doesn't recommend it. So these are some of the roles and responsibilities. If you see roles and responsibilities, so it will be typically present in each and every one of the team or project managers. But obviously it is known, right? So project manager, what he will do, if that is known, then we need not go through responsibilities which are present in each and every team, right? Okay, so this typically completes our one theme, which is plan theme. So any questions? So last time also we had an option, right? So whether we want to continue with planning, or whether we'll take a break for that particular day and discuss about planning today, because it typically takes more than 1 hour of time in order to discuss planning. So any questions from anyone with regards to planning?
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so yeah, let's discuss. So as I said, change is called as an issue. Now let us try to understand what are the types of changes. So second thing is, what are the types of changes according to Prince2? Right? So there are 3 kinds of changes. One change is called as a request for change. And the second kind of change is called as off specification. And the third kind of change is called as problem or concern. Okay, so let us try to understand what is meant by request for change, off specification, problem and concern. So request for change is like, for example, there are some kind of typically requirements. Now what the customer is asking, or what senior user, in Prince2 terminology, we call customer as senior user, right? So what senior user is asking is, instead of that, senior user wants you to develop something else, then that particular thing is called request for change, right? So initially senior user said he wants you to develop X. Now he may say he wants something like X plus 1, or initially he might say he wants X. Now he might say, instead of X, I want Y, right? So such kind of things are called as request for changes. Okay, next thing is, there is another thing called as off specification. What is meant by off specification? So there is a specification or there is a requirement. So instead of that, what happened is you did something else. I mean, there is a specification. Instead of that specification, so there is something called as, you develop something like, spec plus plus or whatever it is. So instead of spec that need to be developed, some spec plus plus has been developed. So then what happened? So customer will come back to you and say, no, this is not what he wants, rather this is what he wants. Then what you will do is you will typically make it this one, which is present onto your left side. So that is called as off specification. In simple English, what we can say is this is called as defect, right? So that's called as defect. So that's typically called as off specification according to Prince2. And another thing is problem or concern. So obviously in projects there won't be there won't I mean, I should not say there won't be normal technical changes and other things, but there could be some things which are not actually technical, but it requires some kind of what I should say is some kind of concern which need to be escalated and all. So typically problem or concern is nothing but it is something which is being escalated, which could be something like, I am not getting proper response from a resource, I'm not getting status reports, I'm not getting this one, or the communication is not very good. So such kind of things, right? Or documentation is not good. Such kind of change is called as a problem or concern. It is typically nothing but escalation. Okay, which escalation typically requires some kind of resolution. It's not just escalating, complaining around. So obviously people will look for some resolution. So that's what is change. That is what is change called. So change is called as an issue. There are three types of changes or issues. One is called as request for change. So request for change is nothing but if customer is asking, initially told that he wants something, now he wants something different, and it is called as request for change. Off specification in English is called as defect, and problem or concern is something like there is some kind of escalation that need to be done. That is basically called as problem or concern, which typically for that problem or concern, people will typically look for some sort of resolution. Okay. That's about change. Any questions on this? Okay, so this is typically completed. Now let us see what is meant by change authority and what does they do. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. What is meant by change authority? Change authority. So I think change authority in PMP terms or PMI terms, or normally in organizations we call it as change control board, right? So in short we call it as CCB, change control board. Here it is called change authority, who is having authority to do some kind of changes. So obviously change authority is not like, so whenever someone comes with a change, it doesn't mean that, I mean, we are talking about users, but there could be an environment where there will be multiple users, multiple stakeholders and all. So whenever a change is getting into project, it need to be carefully managed, right? So the change need to be carefully managed. So if the change has to be carefully managed, then you require, it should not be like a one person's decision whether to incorporate that particular change or not. So it should be a typical group decision. What we should do when there is any kind of change, right? So what is the priority of that change? What is the severity of that change? What need to be done and all, right? So that need to be discussed. So that group typically contains project manager, it may contain executive, it may contain senior user, it may contain team manager. So all these four people will typically become a change board. So whenever a change is coming, these people will decide what need to be done with that change. So at this point of time, so I just wanted to underline this one, at this point of time, what is that is change will be approved or change will be rejected. So it is approved, then people will work on it. If it is rejected, people will not work on it. There are some other things also which we'll discuss in another 15 to 20 minutes. Okay, so that's called as change authority. And whatever roles which I have mentioned here, they can change. So, but a change authority need to be formed with certain key stakeholders, and those certain key stakeholders are the people whom you are seeing on the screen. Okay, that's change authority or change control board. Simple. Okay, so next thing is, let us discuss about two concepts. Those two concepts are called as change budget and change appetite. Okay, change budget, change appetite. Sorry if the spellings are a little wrong, but let us discuss about these two terms. Okay, this is something which I follow sometimes in some in the projects. So as I said earlier, I don't do planning, so it is basically done by someone else. So some in some in it totally depends upon organization. Even someone at director level should be undertaking some kind of initiatives or projects, right? So it's like I'm not a project manager. I'm, as I said sometime back, I'm a senior program manager technical. So what I do is though obviously we should take up a particular project, though we are not a project manager or an initiative. That is what is expected. So what we do is if I'm working on a project, there is something called as change budget, which I'm going to account for if there are no critical timelines. So that is, for example, I came to know that my project is going to end, and I'm just saying that there is typically 100 man days, 100% days. Now we should not say man days because man as well work, so it's called as percent days. So 100% days. So let's assume 100% days is what is the estimate which I have typically got from team on a particular project. Now what I'll do is, considering my historical information, what I'll do is, let us assume there are some changes which are like 10%. So I'll say my change budget is 10%. That means I'll charge it before itself, because anyway I'm going to get changes which are typically 10%. So what I'll do is, upfront what I'll do is, I will add this particular thing into my budget. So I'll say in terms of time, I'll say it will take 110 days, assuming that I'm accounting already 10% changes. Otherwise, what will happen if I'm not accounting? I'll come up with a date. I'll say that project is going to get completed by 31st March. Customer will come and give me some kind of, customer or senior user will say there is a change. Then I'll say that no, it is not 31st March, it will get delivered by 5th of April. Then again I'll get a change. Then I'll again change the timeline and I'll say instead of 5th March it will take 10th, instead of 5th April I'll say it will take 10th April. So instead of changing timelines each and every time, it is better to account for change before itself into your schedule. So that is called as change budget. So the amount of budget, again when we are talking about budget, we are talking about percentage. So percent days is again mapped to cost, right? So 1% day will be costing. I mean, it depends on organization. Some people will say 1% day is like it could be typically like what I can say, $100. $100 is typically less, so they can say that it is like $200 or $400 is what is a percentage. So what we do is 10%. If we are adding it, then what will happen accordingly? That will map to cost. Okay, so that's what is change budget. So change budget is the amount kept aside to manage or to address changes. So that is called as change budget. Okay, let us discuss what is meant by change appetite. Different color. So what is meant by change appetite? Appetite is something which you already know. So let me take an example. So I'll basically talk about two companies where I've worked on. So there was a mid-sized company which I've worked on, which is called as High Concept, small company, sometime back. And I'll talk about another company which I've worked on, which is United Health Group. Decent big company, which is called as Optum now, but it was called United Health Group. So what is meant by change appetite is some organization. So when we were working with Cognizant, so what happened is, so we were typically asking for some kind of changes. So I was in a different role. So I was not from Cognizant, I was from here. So we were asking for some kind of different small change related to this. And there were people from multiple places across India. So someone from Coimbatore, someone from Chennai, Bangalore, and all. So they showed a lot of resistance to changes. They'll say, no, it is difficult, we can't do it, is like this, it is like that, and all. They have shown a lot of change. It again depends on what contract we have with them, but they have shown a lot of resistance. And when in a small company, they were welcoming changes. That means, customers typically asking to change something. We said, yeah, we'll be able to deliver it, we'll be able to complete it, we'll accept it, and all. So change appetite is organization's attitude on acceptance of change. And it basically depends on multiple parameters, right? So there could be a small parameter saying that, there could be a parameter like, why small organizations are accepting a lot of changes, even though the customer is paying little less, is because, they may get another project from the same customer. That could be one of the reasons, right? So change appetite is nothing but organization's attitude to accept a particular change. What is your change appetite? I can say, yeah, I have got a large change appetite. So if customers are asking a lot of changes, also I'm willing to accept it and do those changes. So that's what is change appetite. Okay, some organizations show some kind of resistance. That's about change budget and change appetite. Now let us see certain things which are related to configuration. Okay, so there, I think I have noted last time that someone is certified in ITL and all. So let us see what is configuration. So we have got certain thing called as configuration management, right? So configuration management is nothing but, it is typically an admin activity related to changes. So because why is it called as an admin activity? Because so initially there will be certain configuration. Whenever change is happening, that configuration will be typically changed. That is how do you manage changes is basically configuration management. So sometimes like there is a strategy called as configuration management strategy. So in configuration management strategy, you will clearly define how you are going to manage changes. So when a change is coming, how the change authority will work on, and whether they'll be approving the change or rejecting the change or doing some kind of actions related to change is basically related to configuration management. Okay, so right, and we have got another thing called as configuration item. So what is a configuration item? Any kind of component. It could be a component or a part or a document or a piece of code. So any item which is related to that. For example, let us take an example of a laptop, right? So what are all the components are there? There could be a lot of components like operating system, or something like SMPS. That's anyway, sorry, laptops you don't have. So you'll have something like cooling fan, you'll have SSD, you'll have some motherboards, graphic cards, and all. So all these things will be each and every one of these things is called as a configuration item, right? So what will happen initially? The configuration is something, you do some kind of change, then what will happen? The configuration will get upgraded or changed. So whenever a configuration item is being added, what will happen? The configuration will change from one, what I should say, it might be looking in a particular way. That particular configuration will change and it looks in a different way. So what is the component which has been added, or what is the document, or what is the piece of code that has been added which is bringing this particular change is called as configuration item. Okay, so that's about configuration. That's about configuration item and configuration management. So let us see what is meant by configuration strategy. Okay, so we have got 4 strategies. Configuration strategy is one of the strategy. Right, and strategy is typically, I mean, if I have to define this, strategy is nothing but plan of action. Plan of action. Some people will say, it's a line of attack or plan of attack or something. So, but plan of action. So, how do you tackle changes is being present in configuration strategy? For example, whenever a change is coming, when will the change authority will get involved? Who are the people present in change authority? When they will meet? How they will communicate? And how the changes are approved? How it is notified to all the people? And when the people will be working on that particular change? So what is the priority which they need to work? What will happen if one change authority person is not available? So all these things will be defined in configuration strategy. So configuration strategy is nothing but a document which will convey how you are going to manage changes, right? How you are going to manage or address changes is being present in configuration management strategy. Okay, so again, configuration management strategy template is something which I have shared to you already, right? Out of those 26 management products, configuration management strategy is also present. Okay, so configuration management. Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll discuss something about change control. Okay, so let us discuss about change control process, which is important in this. Okay, so change control process. So change control process is also defined in configuration management strategy. Okay, so let us assume there is a change request which came. That means you have a requirement and you are working on that particular product, like a mobile app, which I have told you earlier. So there is a small change request which came. So first and foremost thing which need to be done is change need to be captured. So change need to be captured. So where it is captured, there will be a lot of tools, right? So some people will capture changes in Excel sheet, and some people will have tools like Jira or any other, or some kind of SharePoint folders or something. So wherever you want to capture that particular change according to your organization's approach, you are going to capture that particular change. Okay, so whenever a change is captured, very important thing which will be done is what is the two things. So what is the priority of it? What is the severity of it? Will be need to be considered, right? So what is the priority? What is severity? So if you are quite interested, maybe I'll talk about something called as Eisenhower's matrix, right? So you can classify whatever changes you are getting into 4 quadrants. First thing is urgent and important, not urgent but important, right? Urgent, not important, and 4th thing is not urgent, not important, right? So you can classify it. So different organizations will classify it based on different kinds of mechanisms. So one is change need to be captured. That means that need to be understood, like what is the priority of it, what is the severity of it and all. So after that, what need to be done is, after capturing the change need to be examined. Change need to be examined. What is meant by examining? Examining is nothing but understanding what is the impact of it. Impact. So what is meant by impact? So when I say impact, so it's like we need to consider something like how much time will it take, how much cost will it take, right? So, and what is the risk which we are taking here, and all. So all these things will be considered when an impact is done. So it is nothing but doing an impact analysis. So after examining, what need to be done is, right, propose. POSC. Okay, propose. So whenever we are doing impact analysis, so obviously we'll have sorry, after impact analysis, whenever we are proposing, there could be multiple solutions. So that we will say that A is one solution, B is another solution. A will take 10 days and B will take 15 days, right? We'll mention here that if we are following A approach, then there could be some kind of issues with performance of that particular application. I mean, if you are able to wait for 5 seconds in order to load a particular screen, it is okay. Suppose if we are incorporating solution B, it will take 4 seconds, right? 4 seconds. So similarly, we are proposing that these are two options which are available, and we will typically leave it to the project board or senior user in order to take that particular decision. So proposing is what is third step. After proposing, decision. So decision need to be taken. What is meant by decision? Yeah, that's fine. We can live with this. So we'll decide with A. So that is, so we'll decide with A. That is what is the typical decision that could be taken. So after deciding it, what need to be done? Finally, this need to be implemented. LEMENT. Okay. So this need to be implemented. Implementing is nothing but making sure that A is in place. So this is what is called as change control process. So whenever there is a change, that need to be captured in some document, some email, some Excel sheet, or any kind of tool, then it need to be examined, right? So examining is nothing but understanding the impact of that particular change in terms of time, all aspects. So scope, time, cost, quality, benefits, and risks, right? Then solution need to be proposed, like what are the solutions, what are the options which are available, option A, option B, and finally that need to be decided. So decision is in that 1 second. So that need to be decided, and finally, okay, sorry. So that need to be 1 second. Okay, so that need to be decided, and finally that solution need to be implemented. So this is what is change control process. So whatever tools that need to be used and whatever techniques which you want to use, that can be considered, but this is what is the overall change control process as defined in Prince2. Okay, so obviously whenever these things are considered, you have to document all these things. So there are some templates which are available out of those 26 management products. So let us see what are those things. So you have got something called as issue register. So whenever a change is coming, you are going to document that in issue register. And there is another thing called as issue report. What is meant by issue report? So in this month, we have got around 10 changes. So you are going to report it. That is called as issue report. So register is used for logging, report is used for basically communicating. That is what is the difference between issue register and issue report. Okay, and there are some other management products also. So those management products are like what I should say, something like we discussed earlier, configuration item, configuration management strategy. These are the things which are related to configuration. And there is another thing which a lot of project managers use in order to document changes or note changes on daily basis, that is called as daily log. And product status accounting basically contains the updated versions of whatever, this is what is a um, updated version of the document. Based on this has been incorporated. So these are 6 management products which are actually mapping to change control process. Okay, so I think once again, what is the next question we have in this? Okay, so that's what is change control process. What are the management products which we have seen? Issue and change control, this also we have seen. So now what we'll do is we'll discuss about projects board decision. So sometime back I have told you, whenever there is a change, project manager will project change authority will either accept that particular change or reject that particular change. So it is not just acceptance and rejection, there are some other things also which typically a project board or change authority will basically do. So let us see what are those actions. So project board's decision on changes. So whenever I say project board decision, it can be change authority decisions also. So it could be project board or change authority accordingly. Okay. So change authority or project board decision on changes. On changes. Right. So apart from acceptance and rejection, there are some other things also which project board can do. So basically what I'll do is I'll talk about request for change whenever there is request for change, and I'll also talk about off specification. So what basically a project board will be doing whenever request for change is coming. First thing is approve it. Simple. Whenever a change is coming, approve that particular change. And second thing is so simple, reject. So apart from approving and rejecting, there are some other things also which a project board can do. One is deferring. Okay. Next, if that change is not clear, then they can ask for more info. Right. And if that change is impacting anything related to schedule or any aspect, then they can ask for an exception. So these are some of the things which project board or change authority can do apart from just accepting, approving and rejecting. Okay. Now let us see what a project board can do if there is an off specification. Off specification is nothing but a defect. Right. So first thing is grant a concession. Grant a concession, that means it is waiver kind of thing. That means, okay, this is a corner case, people will not do this, they will not open your app, they will not open YouTube, they will not open Gmail at the same time, and they will do certain operations, right? So that is a typically a corner case. So what we can do is it need not be considered, like it's a waiver kind of candidate. Okay, so that can be done. If there is a bug, they can say we can ignore this because people will not do such kind of things, right? And second important thing what they will do is they will say resolve it. That means work on it and typically solve it, right? So, and the other things are common, same, like deferring, asking for more information, asking for an exception so these are project board ask for more info, or exception plan, exception, raise an exception. So these are project board decisions whenever there are some changes, or change authorities decisions whenever a change is being asked for. Again, change means request for change or off specification. Okay, so I think these are typically the topics which are present according to this. So now what we'll do is we'll quickly go through the PPT and see if we have missed anything. If we have missed anything, then what we'll do is we'll spend some time in order to discuss those things. Okay, so any questions from anyone till now based on what I have talked?
So Ashit, like you mentioned, like there is issue register. So this is in change control board you mentioned. So
Mhm.
likewise, we cannot mention risk register, or it will come under risk only.
It will come under risk. We have got a risk theme here, right? So more
Yep.
things which are related to risk. I mean, whatever you said is right. So there is something which is related to risk also, risk register and all that we are going to discuss when we are covering risk.
Okay. Thank you.
Um, you mentioned about the change budget and appetite, right? So actually, my question is like, are we? Can't we specify that in plan as well, or there is a separate process for change itself? Means because whenever we are creating a plan, we are not considering change part.
We should be considering change part. So these two things may look independent. I mean, because based on how I am covering, but the thing is, change budget need to be planned. Change appetite is also need to be, what is the change appetite? So that might not be explicitly mentioned in the plan, but change
Right.
budget, I can say 10% or something that need to be definitely considered in the plan.
Okay. Thanks.
So any other questions from anyone? Okay. So what we'll do is we'll go to the slides and we'll cover some more. I mean, we'll just recap the things which are present. If I've missed out anything, then I'll specify that when we are going through the slides. Okay. Okay. It is called as an issue, as I said. So whenever you're discussing this with, sorry, if you are working with, European clients, especially with UK folks, then if they are using the term called as issue, so you need not worry much, but issue and change are typically same. Okay. So I told there are three kinds of changes: request for change, of specification, problem, and concern. So these are typically discussed. Notes on change theme, like change authority. I talked about this. Yeah, one thing which I didn't cover is where it is mapping. So I said we have got principles, right? So starting from continued business justification till tailored to suit environment. So this basically maps to the principle called as manage by exception. Okay, so that's about the principle where it is mapping to. So and one more thing is like change. We have got six aspects: scope, time, cost, quality, benefits. So whenever there is a change, so some aspect or the other aspect or multiple aspects will get affected. And another thing is it is not to prevent changes, because earlier it was different. Earlier execution styles were different. We used to argue with customers saying that your scope is freezed. We can't do anything at all if you are asking me. So now it is different, right? We are talking about agile. We are talking about we value for changes, we'll consider changes and all. We can't say scope is freezed, right? We can't say a lot of things as freezed. Timeline is freezed and all, right? So what need to be done is like it is not to prevent changes, but in order to address the changes in a structured manner, we have change theme. So Configuration management and configuration item. So I have told you what is configuration management and configuration item, right? Then configuration management strategy. So this is something which a lot of Europeans use it, because the project which I'm working on is with European customers. So they ask for strategies, right? They will say, normally, like for example, the strategy which they ask is like, what is your development strategy? What is your testing strategy? So how your testing strategy basically talks about, so what are the tests which you are doing, when you are doing, what you are automating, how much is your regression testing, or how much is your automation percentage, what automation tools you are using in order to do it. So all these things will be typically documented in a strategy. That's called strategy, your plan of action or plan of attacking a particular project. So strategy is not something which you normally see in PMI, but strategy is something which is quite common when you are working with European clients. So though they didn't ask me anything about configuration management strategy, but we basically work on development and test strategies. Okay, so management products which are related to this, as I said, there are 6 management products related to change theme. So that means if you want to map it to management products, everything is mapped. So principles are mapped to themes are mapped to processes, and maybe these themes are also mapped to management products. So though we discuss all these things separately, so everything is mapped to each other. So tomorrow what I'm going to tell you is how these things are mapped, right? So it looks like a discrete topic, but everything is connected to other. Okay, so configuration management records, so daily log, product status accounting, these are the things which I have told. Change register and report. So yesterday when I have shared you, sorry, a week back I have shared you management products and all. So you have a templates for issue register, and what does it contain? Issue register, what does this contain? And issue report, what does it contain and all. So those things will be present. So if I have to map with PMI terminologies, then it is called as change tracker, and this one is called as change request form. Product status accounting I have told, which contains the latest version, and this is important overall in change theme. What is important? This is important, and there can be a question in your examination saying which one of the following is not a change control process. Like in one, the option one could be like capture, examine, propose, decide, implement, capture, analyze, discuss, demo, implement, and all. So you'll have such kind of sequence. So you need to identify what is the correct sequence, right? Correct sequence, and what are these things? What are the sequence items that need to be typically considered? Okay, so that's called issue or change control board. That is called as issue or change control process. So first thing, as I have explained you, capturing is the first part, and after that it need to be examined. Whatever solutions are there that need to be proposed, the best solution will be picked up, which is called as decide, and the best solution will be implemented. And I think projects board decision on changes, apart from approve and reject, there are some other things also here. Defer decision and customer information for exception. Okay, so these are other things. As I said, there are 3 types of changes. One is request for change of specification, and finally problem or concern. So when there is a problem or concern, what it actually seeks for guidance. So a problem or concern may also have an exception plan. So these are the decisions, project board decisions on changes, or change authority decisions on changes. Okay, so this is what I've got with regards to change theme. So any questions from anyone? Okay, so fine. So maybe okay, yeah. So what we'll do is, if there are no questions, we'll again take a short break of not too long as we have taken earlier. But what we can do is, we can take a short break, and when we come back, we can discuss about our next theme, which is progress. Okay, so we'll discuss about progress theme. Maybe I'll give you a short sneak peek on what is risk theme and all, or we can discuss about some other topic related to quality, or we can just manage the time accordingly, and we can wrap up for today. That's what is the plan. Okay, so if there are no questions, we'll take a short break of 10 minutes. Break 2. We will assemble back at 22:30, and when we come back, we are going to discuss about progress theme. Okay, this is typically, oops, 10-minute break. Yeah, not even 10 minutes, it's 9-minute break. Okay, if you have any questions, you can just meanwhile go through whatever I have explained, and if you have questions, please ask. Okay, I'll be on mute for 9 minutes or so, and I'll come back. Okay, I believe everyone is back, so we'll continue with our next theme, which is progress. Okay, so we'll see what is progress theme, and as said, our typical style is same. So I'll typically go through the whiteboard. I'll explain all these things over whiteboard, and then we'll jump on to the slides and we'll discuss more about this. Okay, so any questions you have with regards to change theme which we discussed? Any questions from anyone? Okay. Okay, recording continues anyways. So okay, so what we'll do is we'll discuss these concepts. I don't think it is going to take too much of time, but we'll discuss these concepts on what is meant by progress, what is meant by delegating tolerances. So what are stages, types of stages, how many stages are there, and we'll discuss a lot about logs, reports, registers. Okay, so let's get started with progress theme. Right. So what is progress? Okay, so you have a plan, right? For example, whenever I say plan, normally we try to discuss everything related to time. So we have a plan which basically spans from A to B, which is start date to end date. It could be, start date could be April and April 2019, and end date could be somewhere like December 2019, right? At any point of time, if someone is asking progress, we'll say we are basically here, right? So we'll say we are basically, here, we are here or somewhere. So this is what is progress. So if I have to define it or tell you, then where we are with respect to plan is called as progress, right? So what will happen? There are three situations here. First thing is maybe at this point of time, you may have to be here, but you are lagging behind. So this is typically delta and lagging behind. Okay, so according to the project plan or project schedule, you are typically lagging behind. So progress will say where we are, and based on whether you are lagging behind or you are on track or you are ahead of schedule, you will be taking something called as actions, and those actions are called as corrective actions. Corrective actions. So if I have to relate this again, we can talk about the roles and responsibilities of project manager. So we discussed about that, right? So what are the roles and responsibilities of project manager? So project manager will do certain things related to planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, right? Monitoring, controlling all the aspects of project. And then what project manager will be doing is taking corrective actions. So I'll see if I can pull up that particular presentation. Yeah. Okay. This is what we have discussed on previous Saturday. Right. So we actually told that these are the things which a project manager does: planning, delegating, monitoring and controlling, corrective actions, communicating and decisions. So what are the actions which project manager will take if we are not on schedule? So these are typically corrective actions which project manager would be taking. So it is again mapping to the roles and responsibilities of project manager. Okay, so that's little bit of intro about the project. But the thing is, we are always talking about, we are always talking about only schedule, or we are only talking about time. But again, progress is not just related to time, progress is also related to cost. Progress is also related to quality. Yeah, progress is related to where we are with regards to risks, where we are with regards to benefits, where we are with regards to scope. But most of the times, in order to explain this, what we use is we use the term time, where we are with regards to time, right? So it is with regards to all the aspects. That's what is progress all about. So now what we'll do is we'll jump on to our next one, next question. Oops. Oh, I close this one. 1 second, I'll open that. Yeah. So we have discussed about what is progress. So what we'll do is we'll discuss about what is meant by delegating tolerances. Okay. So we'll see what is meant by delegating tolerances. So have you encountered a situation in some time back, maybe in your organization, delegating tolerances? So let us assume your organization gets a project, and someone at director level or someone, they say that this is um, they say that it is a 6 months project. Obviously there should be some kind of timeline, right? When they are committing to customer, they will say that yeah, it is going to typically take 6 to 8 months or something. Then it will come back to planning, and also initially while bidding the project also we need to commit on some kind of high level planning. So let us assume it is a 6 months project. Then when it is getting to project manager, what will happen is this one will become a 5-month project. They'll say yeah, we need to complete it within 5 months, do whatever it takes. Then when it gets to a next level, maybe someone like team manager or something, it will become a 4.5-month project, right? So what is happening is everyone is keeping some kind of uh, additional time, which is typically maybe I can say it as buffer. So everyone is keeping a little bit of buffer, so that what is happening is right. So everyone is keeping a little bit of buffer, so that if there is any kind of uncertainty, that can be managed well. And very important thing which I wanted to showcase, which I wanted to tell here is, it is not like falsifying information. So no one is falsifying information, but the thing is, they want to keep some kind of buffer, so that if there is any kind of uncertainty, still they'll be able to make the customer happy, right? Or still they will be able to make the project successful. That is what is called as delegating tolerances. So if you see this, we have got similar kind of things when we discussed about organization theme and all. We have got one second. We have got project board, right? Project board, and then we have got project manager, and then we have got team manager. So delegating authority, delegating this kind of tolerances, keeping some kind of buffer is considered to be little common in Prince2. Okay, so then let us see our next topic, which is right. Let us see our next topic, which is stages, types of stages, and how many stages. This is interesting, and there will be a question on this, one or two questions on this related in your examination. Okay, so this is about stages. So first thing is, we know that there is a project which spans from point A to point B. Let us mark it as star. Okay, let me use it as point A and point B, which starts at A and which typically ends at B. So now what will happen is, this particular project is divided into little smaller chunks, and each and everything is called as a stage. I'm mentioning S1, S2, S3, and S4 as stages, right? So first thing is, we'll discuss how many stages need to be present. So does Prince2 define anything? Yes, Prince2 does define something. There should be at least 2 stages. So one stage is basically for planning, and another stage should be basically for delivering. So there should be minimum, please understand, it is not like 2 stages. There should be minimum 2 stages for a Prince2 project, and there can be n number of stages according to the complexity of the project. So minimum 2, maximum is something which Prince2 didn't define. Okay, that's what is about how many stages should be present in a Prince2 project. Okay, so next thing is, why stages? Why stages? Why do we require stages? So we require stages in order to control the project. Whenever I say we, it is like project manager requires stages in order to control the project. If by controlling the project, controlling is again the responsibility of project manager. So I think, right? Yes. So you have seen something called as control. So controlling is also a responsibility of project manager. That is the reason why, in order to have a better control, we require stages, right? So next thing is, what is a stage? What is stage? Stage is nothing but it is typically a control point. So you'll see at that particular place where you are, and you will take corrective action as a project manager. Okay, so that is what is meant by stage. So for example, and another thing is, how many stages? I have told 2 stages, but you know how stages are basically how many stages a project should have. So what is the parameter which need to be considered while defining number of stages? So the question could be something, parameter to be considered while defining stage. Defining stages. So let us assume there are 2 kinds of projects. One is called as risky or critical project, and one is, you know, super cool project. Cool project. So for a critical project, you need to have maximum control points. Maximum control points. Then what will happen if you have maximum control points? We can stop and we can evaluate maximum control points. Okay. So for a cool project, you need not have. You can have less control points. Okay. So that's a parameter to be considered while defining a stage. So see what is project. So if there is a, you know, if the customer is expecting that particular product on a particular day, and if we are not delivering on that particular day, if he is unhappy or it is going to bring loss for your organization or project, then what you have to do is you need to monitor it closely. And if the customer doesn't care, I mean, if he doesn't care whether the project is delivered in 3 months or 6 months, then you can consider it as cool project. And what you can do is you can have less number of control points, right? So in agile terminology, these control points control points are called as sprints. In waterfallish model, according to PMI terminology, these are called as milestones. Here in Prince2, we are calling it as stages. Okay, so the terminology is a little different considering which approach which we are following, but control points are control points. Okay, so and let us try to understand. I have told, right, critical project you can have shorter, many number of stages. In a non-critical project you can have as less stages as possible, but there should be at least two. Okay, so now let me introduce you to a topic called as any question?
Yeah, I have a question. So ideally, a sprint should be of 2 weeks, whereas we are not particular on milestones and stages. So is there any proper time lapse for these, or they could be anything as per the organization?
It is per the organization. For example, I'll tell you, in my organization only, uh, we have sprints. If certain thing need to be delivered quickly, what we'll do is our sprint is typically 1 week, right? So we have 1 week sprints where we typically start a sprint on Tuesday and end by next Monday. Why Tuesday is because we'll have a better control. It's not Monday to Friday. So if it is non-critical, what we'll do is we have sprints which typically span to 2 weeks. I mean, I'm talking about my business unit. So what I should say is, like, sprints or control points totally depends from organization and criticality of project.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. So now what we'll do is, like, we'll go back and we'll see what are the types of stages. Okay, so I'm deleting this. So there are two types of stages. One is called as management stage, again terminology, and a question here, management stage, and another one is called as technical stage. So Prince2 recommends, Prince2, what it recommends is, it basically recommends management stage, right? You may get a question in your examination saying that what does Prince2 recommend, management stage or technical stage, right? So you have to say Prince2 recommends management. So the question is, what is meant by management stage and what is meant by technical stage, right? So basically what will happen is, if I have to tell in a little different way, then technical stage is more like waterfallish. So that means, like, initially people will be working on requirements, then people will be working on development activities, and people will be working on testing activities. There can be some kind of overlap here and there, but it is like using, only a one skilled people will be working in each stage. One skill one skill per stage, right? And another thing is, these things overlap, and if they overlap, what will happen is you don't know where you are. So that's the reason why Prince2 basically recommends management stage. In other way, if I have to tell it in a more clearer way, Prince2 recommends sprints or agile, rather than, if this is basically like waterfall. I'm just giving an example here. So technical stages, what will happen is you'll have overlapping, and only a specialist person, or one kind of skilled person will be working on it, right? So that's the reason why technical stages are not recommended. Okay, and management stages basically talks about how much commitment the resource is making. So typically it is like more like sprints. So Prince2 recommends management stages over technical stages. Okay, so this basically completes our third one. So now let us discuss about let us discuss about fourth one, which is logs, reports, and registers. So again, let us jump back to what project manager does, because everything is related. So what project manager does? Project manager does something called as, monitoring. How does project manager monitor? And another thing is communicate. he does monitoring, and he, project manager does controlling, and finally that will be communicated to all the key stakeholders, relevant stakeholders. So how the communication will happen, how the monitoring will happen, and how the communication will happen, typically it will be done with the help of certain documents. Okay, so that means it will be basically done with the help of reports. So let us see what are logs which project manager manages, registers, and reports. So what project manager does is, project manager basically does communication. Most of the time, I mean, if you see PM, PPM BOG, then what they say is like PM will spend around 90% of time in communicating. Okay, so communicating, it includes communication over calls, emails, reports, everything, right? So how progress is communicated? So progress is known, monitored, and communicated with the help of three things. So first one is basically reports, and second one is basically recording, right? I mean, you need to record certain things in order to communicate. Recording will be done with the help of registers. And so the project manager shouldn't be missing anything. So obviously he need to document all these things and document what is happening each and every day. That will be documented in logs. Okay, so I'll talk about logs. There are two logs which project manager basically manages. One is called as daily log, and another one is called as lessons log. Daily log is nothing but, so it's, I mean, don't treat it as a document. For example, if you are going into a meeting, so a lot of project managers, what they will do, they will take a book. Some people will take laptops and they will go for meetings. Okay, so logs are nothing but one kind of communication on what the project manager does, right? So lessons log, if there is any kind of lesson which has been, or any kind of improvement or lesson which is basically need to know or need to be documented, that will go into lessons log, right? So if lessons are only documented at the end, what will happen? We'll miss out a lot of important things. And one of the principle is like learn from experience, is what Prince2 says. So lessons need to be, lessons are something which can get what I should say, uh, created each and every day, right? Good things and bad things can happen each and every day. That can be documented in a lessons log. Lessons log, you can just consider it as a diary or a book which project managers takes to meetings. Okay, now let us see what are the registers which project manager basically has manages. So important registers are only two. One is called as issue register. So issue register basically talks about changes, right? And there is another important register which project manager manages, which is risk register, right? So these are two registers which project manager manages. Register is nothing but whenever there is a change that need to be, I mean, I have told you, right? So whenever there is a change, first and the foremost thing is that need to be captured. Where it will be captured? It will be captured in it will be captured in issue register. Okay, right. So next thing is, so communication will, most of the communication will be happening with the help of reports. Though I told logs and registers are required because in order to accumulate the information and collect the information, but collecting the information will be done with the help of registers and logs, but communicating will be happening with the help of reports. So this is more important, right? So reports are of two types. We have stopped it. We were discussing about reports when we discussed about organization theme, but there are two kinds of reports. One report is called as event driven, and another one is called as time driven reports. Okay, so what is meant by event driven reports? So whenever an event happens, then project manager need to communicate, right? That is called as event driven report. One example which I can give you is exception report. Exception report is a good example of event driven report. So next thing is what is meant by time driven report. So there are some reports which are like highlight report, right? So and another thing is something related to changes, issue report, end project report, end stage report, and lessons report. So these are the reports which are present. These are the reports which a project manager basically manages. So reports are basically used as a tools for communicating. Highlight report is nothing but, it looks little different, but highlight report is nothing but status report. So just today morning I've sent status report, so I'll say the please find the highlight report attached. So it is nothing but status. Okay, how you want, I mean, Prince2 would definitely recommend some kind of templates and all, but it again depends upon organization to organization and expectation to expectation. So you can fine tune that particular report and customize it so that it fits the needs and expectations of your organization. Okay, so highlight report terminology, this is nothing but your weekly status report. Okay, so those are reports. Suppose if I have to show you this previous, I mean, whatever we have discussed previously, right? Yeah, there are 26 management products which I have shown you here, right? So all the reports, all the reports, all the registers except quality register, forget about quality register. So, and all the logs, again forget about quality log. So all these things will be managed, all these things will be prepared and maintained by the project manager. So there could be questions, right? So what project manager actually does? So project manager maintains all these things. Project manager actually maintains all this. Okay. Okay. So now what we'll do is same thing. We'll go through the slides and we'll see if we have missed out anything. Otherwise, what we'll do is, once this is done, we'll complete this progress theme, and I'll give you a sneak peek of what is risk. We'll not complete it, but at a higher level, I'll just give you what is risk, and we'll discuss about some kind of supplementary topics, something like a quality theme we have discussed last time. So there were some kind of terms related to I mean, I have given you an example, but the thing is, I'll just tell you an example of what is meant by quality control and quality assurance. Okay. So, yeah. So what we'll do is we'll go through the slides and then we'll discuss about the other topics as well. Okay. Okay. So this one I think I have told. So I was whenever we are talking about progress, I think we were normally discussing about time, but it is not just related to time. It is related to all the aspects. So last time I have told, right? So there could be a different question and aspects of Prince2. Make sure that you refer that. Okay. So yeah, progress is achieved through managing stages. Right. So I have told delegating tolerance also, like initially there will be tolerance and there will be stage level tolerances, work package level tolerances, and there will be certain deltas in communications. So which is not like falsifying the information, but it is just to be on a safer side, keep some kind of buffer or contingency. So number of stages, as I said, if it is a critical thing, then have more number of stages. Critical project have more number of stages. If it is not critical, then project manager decides that there can be less number of stages. Okay, so at least 2 stages is what is recommended by Prince2. So you may get a question saying that how many stages are required for Prince2, how many at minimum stages are required for Prince2? 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. So then you have to put, 2 is what is on stages. So foundation examination can be such simple as well. I mean, at least 50 to 60% of the questions, not 50%, 70% of the questions are extremely straightforward. Okay, I told you the difference between management stages and technical stages. So, right. So important thing is you need to understand that Prince2 will focus on management stages, not on technical stages. Prince2 recommends management stages and not technical stages. Okay, so as said earlier, there are two kinds of controls, time driven and event driven. So time driven is whenever an event happens, suppose there is an exception, as I said some time back, that one resource met with an accident, then what will happen? The project, I mean that particular stage, which need to be executed in 1 month 3 days, would be completed in typically 2 months. Then what project manager will be doing? Project manager will be raising an exception. So exception is like event, right? You will not wait till end of the week to share this information to project board. So whenever event occurs, project manager, what he will do, he will raise an exception to project. He will raise an exception and he'll communicate that to project board. So that's the reason why event driven reports, you need not wait till whenever an event occurs, report it to the project board immediately. So time driven reports are typically being done whenever there are time driven reports. Time driven controls are basically being done when time driven controls are basically being done at periodic intervals of time. For example, as I have mentioned, those reports, like, so lessons learned report will be basically prepared at the end of the project. Highlight report will be shared on a weekly basis. End stage report will be shared at the end of each sprint maybe. Okay, so such kind of periodicity will be defined. Okay, these are the reports. And very important, who is very important person in progress team? Very important person in progress team is project manager, because project manager will be communicating and reporting all these things to the relevant stakeholders. Okay, so this all we have discussed: lessons log, lessons report. Very important thing is this one. So okay, I'll just try to explain you this one, because this is an exception and it will come, there is a high probability that it can come for your examination. Okay, so all plans are prepared by project manager except one plan which is called as team plan. So team plan is basically prepared by team manager. Okay, next, all reports are prepared and shared, all reports are shared or prepared by project manager except checkpoint report. So checkpoint report is prepared by team manager and that will be shared to project manager. Okay, so checkpoint report is prepared by team manager and that will be shared to project manager. So why I have told these exceptions, because normally what I say is, if you see term plan, then mark the name of project manager. If you see term called as report, who is preparing it, put name of project manager. But these are the two exceptions. So there is a high probability that you make it a question saying that team plan is prepared by whom? Team manager, project board executive or something. So you need to select the appropriate option. Similarly for reports, all the reports are prepared by project manager except checkpoint report. Okay, so that's considered to be important. So exception we discussed. Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll take a short break for another 5 or 10 minutes, and when we come back, we are going to discuss about certain things which are some sneak peek towards risk theme and some more information related to quality theme, and we'll wrap up for today. Okay, that's what is the plan. So we'll take a very short break. So now we are at 6. We'll take a 9-minute break. Break 3. So 23, 15. We'll come back and we are not going to talk too much. So we are going to talk for around 20 minutes and we'll discuss a bit about quality theme and a little bit about risk theme. Okay, so that's what is the plan. So I'll be on mute till then. Pause recording.